Hello, this is Ed Rigsbee. I am the Executive Director of the Cigar Peg Philanthropy Through Fun. We're the host of the Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame. Today's Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame showcase. We've got four awesome speakers for you. Again, want to remind everybody that if you registered to view this showcase, you will get an email using the email that you registered at the end of the year, and you will get to vote for which speakers this year will be inducted into the 2024 Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame. Also, just to let everybody know, the Cigar Peg is a nonprofit. We're not a speakers bureau. What that means is we encourage you to connect with all of the speakers today and in our directory. Connect with them directly. Don't worry about having to go through anybody. You contact them, you negotiate your best deal with them, and nobody has to be a middle person. All of the speakers will have their videos on a separate page at the Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame in the directory. So let's jump into this. Our first speaker has over 3 decades of experience in building high-performance teams in the hospitality and healthcare industries. He is an expert in employee engagement and now helps leaders build highly engaged workplace cultures through lead well in order to live well, leadership retreats, training workshops, and keynote speaking. Today, he will share a simple yet powerful way that leaders can transform their quiet quitters into passionate performers at work and at home. Please welcome Bruce Berlin.
Thank you, Ed. You may have heard about this new thing called quiet quitting. Well, quiet quitting is not a new thing. It's just a new name for an old thing called employee disengagement. And it's the greatest threat in the workplace today. This is supported by the most recent Gallup survey showing that 77% of workers worldwide are not engaged. And this translates into a staggering $8 trillion annual cost to the global economy. So how did we get here? Well, employee disengagement is caused by employees lacking emotional connections with those that they work with, most importantly, with their leader. And these emotional connections are important because they create emotional energy. And emotional energy is important because the majority of our energy, about 70%, is emotional energy, not physical energy. Think about your cell phone. When your battery is running low, you probably take action to conserve its energy. Maybe you put it into low battery mode. Well, just like a cell phone needs battery energy to operate, employees need emotional energy to operate, to be engaged. And when their emotional energy is running low, they need to take action to conserve it by limiting their effort. And this negatively impacts productivity, which in turn reduces profitability and results in these employees being labeled as quiet quitters. And just like a cell phone battery gets its energy from a charger through electrical connections, employees get their emotional energy from their leader through emotional connections. Now, for many leaders, the thought of being responsible for employee engagement seems like one more thing to do when they're already at capacity. But the good news is that creating emotional connections with others does not require much energy. In fact, the most powerful thing that leaders can do to transform their quiet quitters into passionate performers is to simply give them their attention. And equally as important as giving people their attention is what they're giving their attention to. 14 years ago, my wife, Michelle, and I were married. And it was a second marriage for both of us. And we blended our 5 children together, ages 11, 12, 13, 15, and 17. I know. What could go wrong? Well, we didn't get into this blended family journey blindly. No. We both grew up watching the Brady Bunch on TV, so we knew what we were getting into. Well, a few months after our wedding, unlike the Brady kids, our kids were disenchanted with this new family. If it were a workplace, I would say that they were disengaged. And no one was more disengaged than Michelle's youngest son, Billy. And that's because he did not have an emotional connection with me. In fact, he hated me. Now, I know hate's a strong word, and the only reason I use it is because that's the word that he used when he would talk about how he felt about me to his friends or to his family or to anyone who would listen. And this caused a lot of stress in our home for everyone. So how did we get there? When I was dating Michelle, I gave the majority of my attention to her. And what I gave my attention to was her heart, so I can get to know her. And she did the same with me, and that created an emotional connection between us that eventually led to marriage. Now, after we were married, I gave Billy lots of attention. I gave him attention when he left his shoes in front of the front door to remind him to move them out of the way so no one would trip on them. I gave him attention when he left his jacket on the floor next to the coat rack to remind him to hang it up on the coat rack. And I gave him attention when he left his wet bath towel on the floor in his bedroom to remind him to hang it up in the bathroom. What I gave my attention to with Billy were his habits, not his heart. And all that created in him was resentment. Have you ever found yourself giving more of your attention to people's habits before their hearts, at work or at home? It's easy to do with our busy schedules and reacting only to what we see people doing. But as you can see, this comes with a cost. About a year and a half into our blended family journey, my wife Michelle was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was as though all of a sudden time just stood still. Everyone was scared and didn't know what to do. And at that moment, my priorities shifted. Relationships with the kids became more important than rules. How the kids were doing became more important than what they were doing. Now, immediately after her diagnosis, I did what any husband would have done. I took her to all of her doctor's appointments and scans and screenings and biopsies. I was with her at the hospital for her surgery. And then I brought her home and took care of her for 2 weeks while she recovered. And during this time, I did things for her kids that she ordinarily did. I made lunches for them for school. I transported them wherever they needed to go. I made dinners. I did the laundry. I cleaned the house. And while I was doing these things, as I interacted with the kids, I gave attention to their hearts before their habits. My interactions with Billy were much softer because I knew what he was going through. I knew how scared he was. About 3 weeks after Michelle returned home from the hospital, she was having a conversation with Billy. And Billy said this to her. You know, Mom, Bruce isn't really that bad a guy. I don't think there's anything that he wouldn't do for us. And at that moment, his hatred towards me was gone. Completely gone. When I gave my attention to Billy's heart, he realized that I cared about him and that I was for him. And that created in him an emotional connection with me, which opened up the door to us building a healthy relationship that continues to thrive today. If you're a leader, in order to have engaged employees and family members, the most important emotional connection for them to have is with you. And all you have to do to create this emotional connection is to simply give them your attention so they know that you care about them and that you are for them. And when you're giving people your attention, remember this: always start by giving attention to their heart. My name is Bruce Berlin, and I would love the opportunity to work with you and your team and help you transform your quiet quitters into passionate performers.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. Very good points about dealing with people's hearts. Our next speaker has had over 30 years experience helping organizations attract, nurture, and delight members. Founder of Engage U University, an on-site, online, and on-demand skill building performer, Kelli shows you and your members how to have a high ROI return on interaction and build an amazing culture with resilience through adversity. Her showcase topic today is resilience and rockstar performance. Put traction and action in all your distractions. Please welcome Kelli Vrla.
Thank you, Ed. Hi, everybody. Yes, I want to talk about traction and action in all our distractions. I'm Greek. I don't know if you saw Big Fat Greek Wedding, but my Greek grandfather had a lot of great things to say. And one of the things he said about motivating people, he said there's two ways to motivate people. You got to know what makes them tick and what ticks them off. Well, I've learned that we all have things that we love about our jobs and things that we don't love so much. So if I were to ask you, what do you love about your job? A lot of people would say the people, the challenge, the variety, the paycheck. And then I say, well, what frustrates you? And you know what they say? The same thing. The people, the challenge, the variety, the paycheck. So what I'd like to share with you today are some thoughts about how you can really tune in to the things that make you tick and your staffs and teams, and that might tick you off, that will pull you off of what we call that ultimate focus. You do realize that everyone is super distracted right now. Many of the groups that I'm working with, their teams are really getting to that burnout point. And what that means is staffing has been a huge issue. They are wearing many hats and they need a little bit of inspiration and delight and motivation. And so I like to call myself an irritational speaker. I'm not going to come in and just do the rah rah. I want to give them some super hot takeaways. So let's think about your world, your life, things you love about your job. What I love about my job is the light bulb moment. You never know when it's going to happen. And it's so cool when you can see somebody put those ideas to use and you can see things get really productive for them. Well, what I don't love so much anymore is the travel. Literally just flew in last night, 2 a.m. because of the flight delays. So I decided, let's make something fun out of the thing I don't love that much so I can do more of the things I love. So I'm on an airplane, and what I like to do is I like to help first-time flyers get through the experience. So let me tell you what I mean. And you can always tell who the first-time flyers are, right? They're the only ones watching the emergency announcement, right? There's a woman sitting next to me, and she's like white knuckling the armrest, the one that I'm going to steal halfway through the flight. Anyway, so she's looking around for the nearest exit, and I didn't have the heart to tell her, listen, ma'am, if we go down, there will be a lot of exits. In fact, you'll be out. You'll be out already. Part of you will be out over here. Part of you will be out over here. What I don't say is I wait until it's over so she can take it all in. And then I turn to her and I say, have you not flown before? And she said, no, I'm terrified. I said, well, you know your part on the takeoff, right? And she goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, with the fuel prices what they are these days, the passengers have to help with the lift of the aircraft when we take off. And she said, really? I said, yeah, it's real simple. We've been doing it for months, works like a charm. All we have to do is as we start rolling down the runway, we just have to flap a little bit like this. Okay, now she's getting worried again. She's looking out the window. And you know how your voice carries on a flight. So the gentleman in front of me heard me. And when she wasn't looking, he turned around to me and he goes, hey, we heard you. We'll do it with you. I'm thinking, oh, this is great. And then the gentleman over here is tugging on my jacket and he goes, hey, we're in. You got a crew, baby. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. So we're rolling down the runway and I check my crew. Check, 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 check. I look over here and she's got her eyes closed. Check. And we take off into the wild blue. A lot of the other passengers joined in. We looked like a flock of crazed geese, right? And then when we finally hit the wild blue, she's like doing her touchdown dance. I did so good on my first takeoff. And then when we got to Pittsburgh, we all watched her go off alone to take her connection. No, I'm not that mean. I said, I got to be honest with you. We don't really do that on the takeoff. And she said, I was a little suspicious. She said, but I got to tell you, I was so focused on being a good flapper that I forgot we left the earth. And to me, that was the resonance that I wanted to hear. We are so distracted right now and we're so disconnected that one of the things I would love to make sure that you and your teams can embrace is some things that we can learn, from this kind of situation. You realize that three of the biggest challenges with most groups that I'm working with right now: unappealing company culture, increased turnover, and a lack of people really getting into that transformation that will make people feel more connected. And so, some things that I'd like to say as takeaways for this particular story. Number one, remember to be more present in everything you do. The world is in high distraction mode. We've got to practice plugging in to get what I call that high ROI, which is return on interaction. We need to be sure. I mean, just imagine next time you go into Starbucks and you look at the barista and actually pay attention to your mocha mocha loca latte or whatever it is you get, or Walmart. When the greeter says hi, you go hi back, and it freaks them out. So it's good for everything. It's also good cardio. But I'm serious. Second thing I think would be really awesome is that always be aware of what makes you and your teammates tick and what ticks them off. So you can always try to temper your responses, and you can know what you can do to focus forward to fix things and not back on blame. And then finally, I'd like to remind us all, embrace the crazy makers so you can have lightness as you do so, because what it'll do is it'll optimize your mindset, your heart set, your soul set, and your skill set. And so, next time you're having a first time flying experience, or how about a first time anything? When you first do a process, it can kind of get under your skin. We're all really competent. The last thing we want to do is feel awkward. So I'm going to encourage you to help you and your teams focus more on the things that you do love so you can get to them as you're doing the things that you have to do. Think about it. I am being Greek, and I always want to make sure that we follow the words of my cousin Aristotle. To know and not to do is the same as not knowing. And so I'd like to share with you a final word on making sure that we do this. In Greek, we have a word that talks about being all in. When I had that passenger flapping, she was all in. She was so all in that she wasn't anxious or nervous about the first time experience. And that's what you can do as well. When we say opa in Greek, we mean we wish you abundance in life, happiness, and health. And when we say it, people say it back. So if I say opa, you say opa, yay. It really does have an effect when we notice each other. So I'm going to ask everybody to consider to do what you can do, but do more of what you already know so you can help people tap in, tune in, and turn on. In the meantime, I would like to say that we are really excited to help you figure out what your engagement level is, what your cultural transformation could be. So I'd love to join you for opening or closing keynotes, coaching, workshops, VIP interviews. We make sure we do it before, during, and after the event so that we continue that reinforcement with video bites and audio bites. And we make sure we interview key players so we know exactly what your challenges are to customize. It would give me great pleasure if you think I'm a good match. I'd love to come in and help your people engage with OPA. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kelli. I appreciate that. It'll be interesting to see who is going to start the flapping on takeoff and what airlines will embrace that. That should be a lot of fun as we move forward. Our next speaker is Allison. She's had a lot of conversations. She has interviewed over 10,000 people across 13 countries as a focus group moderator. She's worked with teams at Fortune 200 companies to generate $2 billion, with a B, in new revenue. Despite growing up in a silent, non-communicative or uncommunicative family, she mastered the art of conversation. She's here to share how we can turn the uncomfortable conversations we've been avoiding into opportunities for genuine connection. Please welcome the talented and insightful Allison.
Would you like to know the secret of success? Your success is directly correlated with the number of difficult, awkward conversations that you have. Let me tell you about an awkward conversation that I completely messed up with my favorite employee, Holly. Holly was a rock star. Clients loved her. She was very polished and poised, and she didn't miss a beat. And she brought in a lot of revenue. I was looking at a report that she had turned in late, and it was a mess. It was haphazard, disorganized, poorly written, with very odd ideas. Did she not understand the brief? Was the deadline not clear? And then I remembered over the last few days, she'd been noticeably disconnected. She had failed to communicate an important piece of information from a client, and then she disappeared for gaps of time during the day. And I thought, she's got to be interviewing for another job. I mean, what else could it possibly be? So, like any emotionally mature person, I completely avoided the conversation. But over the next few days, I noticed a few more mistakes and then another missed deadline. Holly, you keep messing up. We can't go on like this. First, she got defensive, and then she got hostile, and then she cried. Her 36-year-old husband had had a stroke. She hadn't been out interviewing. She had been out coordinating his care. And I felt like such a jerk. Since then, I've learned that the way that we set up these awkward conversations, you know, the one that you know you need to have, but you really don't want to, the way you set them up determines the way that they're going to go. And there are 3 elements of setting up these awkward conversations so they don't inflame more conflict and instead create connection. The first element is start talking. Yeah, as soon as you notice that something is different or amiss, make a commitment to have the conversation within 24 hours. And here's why. Our brains are hardwired to fill in the absence of information with negative assumptions. It's hardwired into this lizard brain back here. And the longer you wait, the more negative assumptions you fill in, and all they're going to do is explode all over the other person, like I did with Holly. So start talking. The second is to ask this very specific question. Ask people, are you open to a conversation about how it's going? Now, there are 2 parts of this question. The first is, are you open to a conversation? In communication, we have one of 2 stances. We're either open or it's talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. And if the face ain't listening, you're not going to get anywhere. If someone says, yes, I'm open to a conversation, they are committing on some level to be receptive and to engage with you. So are you open to a conversation is a very powerful way to start. And did you notice how neutrally I described the topic? A conversation about how it's going, not what a jerk you've been or how you've been messing up. Neutral, 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 so that we're starting these awkward conversations in a way that everybody's emotional system and nervous system is regulated and calm. So use this question. Are you open to a conversation about how it's going? And the third is the most powerful tool. It's kind of like having a magic wand that determines what can happen in the conversation and what cannot. And this is to set context. Context is what you say before you get into the meat of the conversation. I use the acronym SET. S, say how important the relationship is to you. I could have said to Holly, Holly, you are an invaluable member of the team. I rely on you and I trust you. E, establish your emotions. I've been confused about what's been going on and I'm nervous to bring it up. And T, talk about the future. When we get through whatever this is, I hope we can go back to building a great business, having a lot of fun, and making buckets of money together. S, say how important the relationship is to you. E, establish your emotions. And T, talk about the future. Set context. So first start talking, second ask if you're open to a conversation, and third set context. If your organization's growth is being stymied and stunted by communication gaps, gaps in productivity, gaps in sales, gaps in innovation, I can help. Remember that when you avoid short-term discomfort, you are signing up for long-term dysfunction. There is no third choice. So I invite you to step into the short-term discomfort, have that awkward conversation, and increase your success in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Appreciate that. It's always hard to have these conversations. I have all kinds of those kinds of conversations I should be having. But let's move to Erik Larson. Our next speaker has over 25 years of experience helping leaders and teams align product and tech strategy, optimize processes, and build collaborative teams that outperform. Today's showcase is titled F Words for Leaders, 4 Essential Foundations of Your Business. Please welcome Erik Larson.
Thank you, Ed. Very excited to be here with you today to talk about the 4 essential foundations for your business, team, or organization. Over the last 5 years, I've worked with over 120 companies that are going through a merger or acquisition transaction or are looking forward and getting ready for that next round of M&A. So these 4 essential foundations for your business come from the best of the best. What I want to walk you through today is the good, that desired outcome. We'll contrast that with the bad, those common problems that show up. And we'll take it one step further with the ugly. What is the resistance that's keeping you and your team from breaking through? And I want to leave you very importantly with how can you get a reality check? How can you measure where your team is across each of these 4 essential foundations? So let's jump in. The first one is first. How about that? That'll be easy for you to remember. What we're talking about here is a clear #1 top priority. And if these arrows here represented the initiatives that are currently being discussed in your business or organization, can you tell me which one of those is the top priority? That's how it feels for your team when that clarity and that #1 top priority is not first and foremost. It's almost like you're walking through a maze and you don't know how to get out. So how do you know if your team is mature in this area, is healthy in this area? Pay attention to the words that they are speaking. Are they speaking the vision that you are casting? #2, flow. And by flow, we're talking about getting the right stuff done. So building on that number one top priority, which tells us what is the right thing, are we executing and delivering? Or does it feel more like this? Traffic, congestion, not able to get things through, the noise, the distractions of whatever shape and form they might be in your business. Are your team members able to put on those noise canceling headphones and get in that flow state where the most important things can get done? Number three foundation that's essential for your business is flex. And in this foundation, we're talking about optimizing those flow state processes so that your organization can grow and scale. And that word scalability is the number one most common investment thesis that private equity and venture capital investors will be looking for in that next round as they partner with you. This cute little guy here, the hamster on the wheel, I think it's possible for the hamster to get into that flow state. But the problem is there's no level 2, level 3. There's not a bigger hamster wheel. And similarly, is your team, are they flying blind? Do they know what that next level is? Can they visualize the progress, where you've been, where you are today, and that dotted line into the future of where you're headed? Number 4 foundation that's essential for your business is fuel. And here we're talking about keyword sustainable or sustainability. And so we take that growth, that scalability, and the question is, can we do that over time? Because guaranteed, there will be unplanned events. We seem to be living in a time of many unplanned events. And those unplanned events can sometimes escalate into a crisis. And sadly, when you're in crisis mode, it's a little bit too late to understand and start measuring if your team is healthy and sustainable. And in this image here, I want to give you a picture of what that looks like. This is a rugby team. They are leaning in for the scrum, and pay attention to the shoulders of all these individuals. It's forward, their feet. They are actively leaning in. And that's the question for you to assess and observe with your team. Are they leaning in? Are they leaning out? Or worse, have they already checked out? This foundation is probably my favorite one. Would love to talk to you more about that. But let me leave you with this for today. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to a webpage where you can find more information about these 4 essential foundations, including a downloadable PDF file here that goes over the foundations, the good, the bad, the ugly, and also how you can measure and understand where your team is today. Thank you so much for the time. Also on that webpage, if you want to contact me, I would love to talk with you about how I can help your team be more effective.
Thank you, Eric. That was great. I have a visual now in my head of all the rugby people leaning in, leaning in, leaning in. So the next speaker we have is Dale Irvin. And Dale is already a inductee to the Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame. And Dale's an interesting guy in the respect that he kind of keeps all of your speakers at your conference on their toes, because at the end of the day or at lunch or whenever appropriate, I'll let him tell you exactly what he does, but he shares with your audience and engages with your audience about the speakers that really make a difference. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dale and go, Dale, tell everybody a little bit more about what you do and why they want you at their meetings.
Thank you, Ed. I am the world's only professional summarizer. What I do is I attend meetings both in person or virtually, and I listen to every word uttered by every speaker. It's a lot of words. It's a lot of information. In order to help you keep all of it straight, I take notes and I return with a summary of what everybody said from a slightly different point of view. But we have found that when it's a different point of view, people tend to remember the serious points even more. So that being said, let me tell you what I learned from the last 32 minutes of speakers that we have had. We started out with Bruce Berlin, who talked about quiet quitting, which is employee disengagement. Now, quiet quitting can also apply to your marriage. So I've heard. And then he said employees are like your cell phone, because when they get low on energy, they plug in so that they can continue to play Candy Crush, because that's very important to your. And then Bruce said he has a blended family and he knows how to handle it because he used to watch the Brady Bunch. Marcia. You can't really learn life from the sitcoms. And then he gave attention to his new son, Billy, by yelling at him. Oh, memories. So anyhow, what you have to do is to give your attention to their hearts, not their habits. Unless, of course, you're a cardiologist where your habit could seriously affect your heart. So that's what I learned from Bruce. Next, we heard from Kelli Vrla, who talked about resilience and rock star performance. And when I think of resilience and rock stars, all I can think of are the Rolling Stones, who are older than all of us put together, and they're still doing it. She said people have things that they love about the job and things that they don't like. And, it's the same things, which that alone will put a person into therapy. Again, so I've heard. And then she doesn't like to travel. So she likes to make it, for first-time flyers, make it a little bit easier by telling them that when they crash, they will be torn to bits. And that's reassuring right there. And then she told the woman to flap her arms on takeoff and got the rest of the people to do it too. And the woman was so excited. She says, I'm a great flapper. That statement's about 100 years too late. The flappers were back in the 1920s. And then she said, when you go to Starbucks, greet the barista. Hey, how you doing? And then for more fun, when they ask for your name, say Bueller. And that's a lot of fun when your coffee comes. And she said, to know and not do is not knowing. Aristotle said that. And to do, be do. Sinatra said that. And finally, opa is the Greek word, opa, which is what you yell when they set fire to your cheese. So Then we heard from Allison, and let's see, success is correlated with difficult conversations. And most of those difficult conversations usually come from telemarketers, which is why I like to play with them. And she had an employee, Holly, who was a good employee, a good earner, but she made mistakes. She missed deadlines. So Kay yelled at her, and the woman cried because her husband had a stroke. Way to make her feel better, Kay. Really, that's a great conversation there. And then the 3 elements to conversation. Number 1 is to start talking, because after all, that's what a conversation is. Number 2 is to ask the person, are you open to a conversation as to how it's going? It's still talking and already in the conversation. And neutral. That's what she stressed, and which is going to make your car go downhill. And then finally, set the context. She has an acronym, SET. Say what you want, establish it, and talk about the future. That's how to deal with employee conflict, as opposed to OME AYF, which is once more, and you're fired. And then finally, we heard from Erik Larson with the F words for leaders, and didn't even come close to the ones I thought there were going to be. But he said number one is first, which I'm glad I wrote that down, just to know that one and first. And then number two is flow. You need the flow when you go to be able to get things through. And then number three is flex. And this flex is some of the best tape on the market. I saw a guy seal a hole in a boat using flex tape. So that is something that's really, really important. So flex or float on that one. And finally is fuel. And I'm a big proponent of solar fuel. So if your team isn't performing well, send them outside to play in the sun for a little while, and they should be fine. And finally, rugby sure looks like a game where you get to know people. I don't think I want to play that game. Anyhow, I am the professional summarizer. This is what I do. I'm kind of like the glue for your meeting. I make everybody laugh at the end of the meeting, and when they hear the important points brought back in a humorous way, they tend to remember it more. So please consider me as an addition to your next event. Thank you, and we validate parking.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. It's always a pleasure listening to what Dale has to say. Although some of the speakers sometimes are a little bit. Thank you everybody for coming to the Virtual Speakers Hall of Fame showcase. And again, any of the speakers that you experienced, they will have this individual video will be in the directory with their website information, so it's very easy for you to contact them. Please feel free to contact the speakers directly, and we'll see you in a month. Bye now. I'm sorry, 2 months. See you in 2 months. 2 months. Bye-bye.